every time someone said it's not possible, I said, okay, that's an opportunity. That's where I need to go.
Gymming business, we got into restaurants, cinema, consumption. We thought we'll capture every wallet of the consumer.
Journalism, I did advertising for a bit. I learned tattooing as well. So I've done all kinds of things, and I would have a fairly confused belief system.
It was like a year and a half in, we were so deeply in love with what we were doing, and we were seeing the early signs of success that we said we'd have to be out of our minds if we just let this go.
The idea of this podcast, which we are calling it the Unlearning, is the idea which comes from being in business for a significant number of years. And we all go through learning and unlearning through the journey of doing whatever we are doing in life. In my case, it was about being a part of a economy which was what I call it the old economy, and there is a new economy which is now emerging, which is through the digital world. And we had built certain belief system when we started business. We had worked on certain assumptions. I don't know how much assumptions and that belief holds true today, but during the course of doing business also, I think all the beliefs were challenged, all the assumptions were challenged. And people survive by changing their belief system, by making adjustment to their assumptions. And this is something which I believe is an experience we should all share and we should all talk about. And that will help, I think, entrepreneurship to flourish in India. And I think India has to become a $5 trillion economy, and it can only become if there are more and more entrepreneurs who comes in and makes less number of mistakes. We have made our share of mistakes, and that's what I call unlearning all about. So if we all can introduce oneself, starting with...
I'm Rana Daggubati, mostly known as an actor, but I've been in the media and entertainment business for over 20 years now. Starting from visual effects to film production to everything that I can make sense of in an entertainment world. In India, the fact that we're so unstructured, trying to bring some structure to that, and that's my job. And I've been associated with multiple businesses outside of the movies. They got a look into the retail world with Kishore Ji. We worked together on Amar Chitrakatha, reliving a comic book that's been large part of our childhoods, bringing them back to visual storytelling. So that's what I do.
What about your investment?
So my investments have been very organic into the entertainment world. Everything that was needed for me to tell a better story, whether it's on a picture front, whether it's with visual effects, animation, graphics, whatever in that form, sound technologies. The other was in syndication and distribution, methods that I can syndicate and distribute my content better. And that's the first world of my investments, which moved into talent being there, storytelling being there. So consumer brand came pretty fairly easy. So that was the next round. So this is where my life is.
So I have an interesting story to tell about how I met Rana. I think it was, we used to run a format called Central Departmental Stores. And that was, we did a film in Calcutta. We had a store in Calcutta in Hyderabad. Hyderabad was one of our largest stores. And we did a Central to promote in Calcutta. We did a film which was made by a Calcuttan, somebody from Calcutta, the director, the star cast. And that film, the ad film became quite big. And we thought we should do a similar kind of a film for Hyderabad city, Andhra and Telangana. And that's how I think our team must have connected with Rana. And Rana was in our office presenting something. And in my room, I was presenting something about Amar Chitrakatha. And he just happened to pass by that door. And he saw Amar Chitrakatha, and Bahubali, I think the inspiration of a lot of art,
imagery, everything
was from Amar Chitrakatha, and that's how we just met and we connected. So there is a story out here also.
Awesome, yeah. So
yes, sir.
I'm Harsh, co-founded the Soul Store. We just, in fact, finished 10 years last month.
So congrats, sir.
Interesting journey. Obviously, when we started off, we were 23. Very, very simple reason was we honestly hated our jobs. 3 engineers, 1 lawyer, no family business, no sort of background in retail, in e-commerce, in apparel, nothing. But we're like, hey, we're fans of pop culture. Let's just do something fun where you don't wake up every Monday hating your job. And worst case, we're all fairly smart people. We've got degrees. We'll go back and get a job if things don't work out, right? So very, very sort of simple, naive philosophy, I guess, when we started off the Soul Store. And the broader idea was we're fans of superheroes, comics, movies, all these characters that we've grown up watching and loving. And as fans, we felt like there weren't enough of viable, good quality products available in the Indian market to buy official merchandise. So that was the sort of broader, simple idea behind which the Soul Store was created. And a lot of people ask me about the name as well. So I'm just going to explain it. There is no fancy story. I think you guys have a much better story in terms of how you came up with your name. But it was a very, very simple, hey, we sell stuff. So sold is a funny pun. And it was genuinely from the soul, right? That's why we left our jobs and we decided, like 4 friends decided to start this together. So it was from the soul. It's not the easiest name to pronounce. It's not the easiest name to sell, but yeah, luckily it's stuck on for 10 years. So people now pronounce the soul so a little more easily than they did 10 years ago. Yeah.
Nice.
But Harsh, they have a very interesting story. They came to address us once and we heard him. And they have made a great, good, profitable business which is growing phenomenally. And I think he spoke about his retail productivity, which is probably one of the highest in the country.
Fantastic. And you reinstall our faith in building merchandising as a business.
No, 100%. I think there is more than enough potential. I think it was just a market waiting to be captured. And I think we were lucky back in 2013. Maybe we were slightly early to the market, but I think it was a sort of sweet spot when people were getting more comfortable shopping online. I think things were becoming slightly easier in terms of starting online businesses. The licensing / online fashion space wasn't as crowded as it is today. And that gave us a sort of decent head start to build the business over the last 10 years. So yeah, I think we've been lucky with a lot of things, but no complaints.
That's awesome. So I'm going to have to try to live up to those first 2 introductions, but I'll try my best. I think, so I'm Aadit. I'm the founder and CEO of Zepto. What we do, it's a little bit interesting, I think, a little bit out there, but we're actually delivering groceries incredibly quickly through a network of highly optimized micro warehouses or dark stores that we built across the country. And the way that we actually started it is it's a fairly funny story. So we never actually started out with the clarity or the intent to build a business. My co-founder and I, we were supposed to be studying in California. Pandemic hit. We, like most of the other international students, sort of found ourselves back in India. And while we were here, we just, the first lockdown, it was such a nightmare getting groceries, right? The offline options were shut. The online options were taking 6, 7, 8 days to deliver. This is like April, May 2020, right? The peak of the nightmare. And the two of us are just staying in this, staying in Sherry Punjab, us by ourselves. Most of our neighbors are elderly, and we couldn't stay with our family because we didn't want to expose them. They were elderly, so we don't want to expose them to COVID back then. So most of our neighbors were elderly. We were staying in Sherry Punjab in Andheri East in Bombay, and we just started out delivering, like for those, for our neighbors. We created a little bit of a group chat, and that sort of slowly started scaling. Eventually, we built out an app, and we called it Kirana Cart initially, and we used to deliver, for customers in our neighborhood. And that sort of started organically growing. And a couple of months in, we said, hey, the feedback that we're getting from people that we deliver to, or the people that call us on the customer support line, and we were everything. We were the customer support executives, we were the delivery partners, we were everything. But the feedback that we were getting was great. And then we said, hey, let's just keep iterating on it until eventually we found, I believe, a product that had such deep customer love that it ended up scaling into a business organically. And so yeah, that's, briefly our journey from, Mumbai to, dropping out of college and starting this business.
Awesome.
But why to drop out of college, yeah?
Yeah, it's a great question. My mom asks me that, every other week. So it's a good question. I think for us, actually, pandemic hit. We didn't really want to do the online learning at the time. So we took a year off. And for that year and a half or so that we had free time, we basically had no plans. Like a lot of our friends that went to prestigious colleges, they were, they had internships at Goldman, they had internships at Morgan Stanley, they had all these sort of great internships. We had nothing, so we were just delivering groceries in Sherry Punjab. But a year and a half in, we actually started getting to a scale, and we started, we started getting a product that was evolved enough where we found deep product market fit, and we were trying to get a scale where we said this is a real business. So like a year and a half in, when we were doing a couple thousand orders a day, which is still small in today's scales, but back then it was massive for us, doing a couple thousand orders a day. And then the door came knocking saying, you got to go back to college now. We said, man, it's like, we have this phenomenal product, it's scaling. Like, we just didn't see ourselves going back. So it was not really a decision that we said, let's drop out, let's start something crazy. It was like a year and a half in, we were so deeply in love with what we were doing, and we were seeing the early signs of success that we said, we'd have to be out of our minds if we just let this go. The chances of getting into a good college is maybe 2-3%. the chances of finding what I think is a generational product is like 0.1% or even rarer than that. So that was a simple
You
logic.
drop out of Stanford.
Yeah.
But that's not a school one drop out of.
I think they'll gladly have you back today if you apply.
I doubt it. I think they're a little bit sick of this whole entrepreneurship thing.
But there is a history
college.
about Stanford dropouts, na?
Yeah, it's an interesting tag to have. Like some people see that as some people in the US, they see it as a cliche. Because I go to some of my friends that were at Stanford that also dropped out. They built these like massive fintech companies or SaaS companies, and they're like, when we talk to people in Silicon Valley, when you say Stanford dropout, they're like, okay, you and everybody else,
How do you feel here? He is 1.5 times your age, 3 times, nearly 2 times.
Yeah,
I just never thought I'll so quickly be on a planet that I'm twice someone's age.
No, I mean, I think
Nearly.
Nearly, yeah. It's almost
He's just 20.
amazing, man.
Thank you. No, I think, it's good to be here. I mean, obviously, like spending a lot of time with folks that are much older than me, whether it's our team or whether it's the folks that I've been fortunate enough to have as investors. That's probably the only reason why we got to this place in the first place. So it's good to. I'm not out of my element now. I think my friends also call me like 40, 45. So hopefully I'll compare to you guys. But yeah.
Old soul then.
Old soul, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, you guys are all just going straight to the pointers that my mom is unhappy about. Dropout, old soul, very like uncle-like fashion sense. So it's like all of that is will start to come out now, I'm sure.
I feel like I have the opposite problem where I feel like I should be a little more mature for my age. I think that's the feedback I get from my friends. But yeah,
I think we sort of embody our businesses in a way, right? So it's I feel like if I was building your business, I would be wearing exactly what you're wearing. And I envy you in that sense. But yeah.
So what's the first assumption or your beliefs which would have got broken, or you would have reviewed it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, like the whole journey of building out Zepto has been just counterintuitive insight after counterintuitive insight. It's all like everything about this business is contrarian, right? And yeah, I mean, I think like the first insight that we started off as is like, initially everybody came to us at the beginning. Like we've had 3 phases of building out this business. When we started, people were like, when we were very small scale, they were like, delivering this fast is not even logistically possible. So that was separate. So they were like, you're smoking dope, you can't even deliver this fast. Then as we started to build that out, they said, okay, nobody even wants this. Like who wants fast delivery, right? And then as we started getting massive scale and millions of customers and I started growing fast and it became clear that people really love the product, then it's like phase 3, which is the phase that we're in today, which is okay, people want it, you can do it logistically, but it's never going to make any economic sense. So that's phase 3 that we're also getting over right now. But I think but
there is a lot of questions on that phase 3 which we would love to ask.
Yeah, I mean, please do. That's also my favorite topic to discuss at this point. But to give you a sense, I think the first assumption actually started off like for us realizing that people really care about fast delivery, especially in India. And we were discussing this before the podcast, right? The way that people buy groceries, it's very high proximity, right? It's from the local Ramu down the road or the local sabji wala, the local doodh wala. Local Ramu is 200 meters down the road. Sabji wala shows up outside your house every morning. The doodh wala delivers to your doorstep. Proximity is intense in India, right? And when you're going after a customer behavior that's high proximity and they're used to that, the delivery time really does matter because it becomes a proxy for proximity, right? And so when we looked at the data, the early data, right, for a 30 to 45 minute delivery, and this is true today at a larger scale, but when you looked at a delivery for a 30 to 45 minute, customers that were getting it in that time frame versus sort of a 10 to 20 minute bucket, just a meaningful difference in retention, how much, what the frequency of the customer was, how likely were they to come back for the second order. And that data to this day, I have it like on my laptop that's ready to open anytime because it was just like the first iconoclastic moment for me. I was like, this intuitively, if you tell someone 10-minute delivery, they're like, yeah, I'll wait. It's fine. 30, 45-minute delivery makes sense. But when you actually look at the data, the way people vote with their feet, it's, unequivocal. People really care about fast delivery. So that was the first thing that I was shocked about when we were just starting out the business.
I just recently met somebody, he's from Hyderabad.
Yeah.
And he used to run one of our formats in that city.
Yeah.
He started on his own, a grocery or a vegetable format. And he said he's put in his own money and he closed down the business within a year or 1.5. And he said quick commerce was responsible for the death of my business.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So Rana, you are in a business which is the most business which changes with every Friday.
Yes, sir. Well, how did it start? Like coming to learning and unlearning, right? Like when I started off first, let's talk about education for a little time because we just spoke about it a little bit. I always assumed it was very important for me to study, and if I didn't I wouldn't make it because all the others at that point were either, like my father was a mechanical engineer from Ann Arbor, Michigan. The other lab owners were either engineers or studied MBA and then came back. And I failed 10th grade in school in Hyderabad.
You failed?
Yeah. So,
Which HPS?
HBS, yes. But I think that school taught us many things because there was so much history in that school. It was part of the Nizams. It's now 100 years since it's been a school. Though I didn't study, there was an idea of scale and bigness because it was a 300-acre school that had like 6 or 7 football fields. It had cricket grounds.
So the belief system started getting formed in the school with the largeness.
With the largeness, I guess. And that was everything of scale was something that I was attracted to. My family made cinema, movies. Back then, we just shifted from Chennai to Hyderabad because the Telugu industry shifted. So we were like the first people in this area called Jubilee Hills in Film Nagar that was full of rocks. And now it's got like 6 studios in that place. But when we moved there, it wasn't really an industry. It was just a bunch of people who were stage producers who liked the movies, brought an ecosystem together, were finding opportunity from village to city. And cinema didn't have an entry barrier for anyone. Like you could have been somebody really educated or doesn't matter. Or if you could be someone who knew life, it still got you there. So somewhere quickly I tilted towards that because it didn't require an entry barrier to get in. Strangely so, I was good with computers. I don't know why that was.
Computer has nothing to do with education.
Yeah, but I guess that was something that I was good at. And I was a big fan of films like Star Wars and others, anything that was spectacle in size. So I thought the first business I was supposed to do was visual effects because that was something that will aid cinema to get skill. So Spirit Media was the company I built about 18 years ago and started doing visual effects. Did that for 5 years. And the entire belief system changed because back then I was hoping a filmmaker walked into my studio and wanted to make a film like Bahubali. But that didn't happen in the times I was doing visual effects. It happened 10 years after that. But I felt like I was early on in that business. I assumed it would be an extremely creative shop that I would have built. But in the end of the 3rd or 4th year, we were becoming more a sweatshop where it became more and more expensive for me to run the place. And it was less creative skill. It was basic titling. It was early visual effects in India, which were very basic in thought. It's never thought through. There was very little time given for it. So it wasn't a business I was having fun doing. I also produced a film back then, which was in 2005, it's called Belly Full of Dreams. It had festival release. We won 2 national awards for the films.
Okay, what was your age then?
I was 23 at that point.
Wow, 20, 23.
Yeah. And what happened was that the film won 2 national awards, but I didn't get a theatrical release because it was so independent. Like the distributor saw it and like, what do you do with this film? Won national award and then what? And the only reason I made some money is because Doordarshan will give you 50 lakh rupees if you win a national award. So that's the only money we made on that film. And I realized, okay, if somebody like me who understands the ecosystem, who's part of this family and that's been in cinema for so long, finds it difficult to put stories out there, which means it'll just be worse for everybody else who's trying to tell stories. And I sold the company to Prime Focus, which is now the largest visual effects company in the world. And I was technically their first acquisition. I tried to be a producer. I had some content. I tried to make films. And I just couldn't convince talent with the stories that I had. Actors were doing different things and you either needed a big actor or director to say yes at some point to get your story together. So 2 years of my life were kind of just moving around talent, trying to get stories. And this is my granddad one day because he made 135 films, like just one dude.
Wow.
So now for him, if I was just walking around for 3 years not making a film, it's like, what are you even doing with your life, right? And I said, here you go, I have a bunch of stories. There's not enough people who want to do this. And he said, why don't you do it yourself? I said, that's not such a bad idea. Let's figure this out. And that's where a relearning set started. And what I always understood with the peers around who were working with me is I never had a problem failing in anything because I failed in school right in the beginning, right? And you have to get back and keep doing something. So it didn't bother me that I had to sell my visual effects company. I mean, in the early 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, right? It was for an old company like ours, like my family, it was a wrong thing to even sell your business. The fact that you don't even know how to run this is why you're getting away from this, right? So it was almost a month-long conversation. My father and I stopped talking also, I think in some ways, because it was an odd thing for them to do. But I guess that was the way I moved, and I had a friend at that point who was doing a management development program in IIM Ahmedabad. So it's a 2-week program on mergers and acquisitions. That's the only thing that I did, and came back and sold the company. So I
That was
just
your internship.
Yeah,
That was the internship.
that's the internship. I came back and sold the company.
Excellent.
And then took the route of an actor, and one after the other. So unlearning it was the only thing that I had to do as I was going along. Whether it's with the stories that you want to tell, because those weren't being told, it's hard to break in. And I said, where I found an opportunity was there. I said, like you said something earlier, we said, this is not possible. So every time someone said it's not possible, I said, okay, that's an opportunity. That's where I need to go.
That's where you get more excited.
Yeah, more excited. And I also started realizing nobody did it, which is why no one speaks. And we are so early as a country. Like we are early in a sense, when I mean it, we're 100 years after America in terms of cinema.
Yeah.
So there's a much bigger growth curve. And we didn't grow like the West did, where we're not one Hollywood. We are 10 industries within India. We speak 10 different languages, each of them as big as the other, if not more, right? And equal number of people speaking those languages. So that didn't give us an opportunity for all of us to talk, all the industry to talk and create scale that Hollywood did, right? So I said, let me take that as the first step. So after I finished my Telugu film, I landed up in Bombay, did Dammarodam, understood that two cities make films, but completely different in terms of the ethic, the approach to storytelling, the way of life. And I thought, okay, some point these two will marry, and it took me a decade from there. But here you go. Now today, all the industries are talking. We're almost like one single industry. I think Bahubali was the first in that sense to say India can be one cinematic nation and a film can do 1,000 crores. And then followed up with 2 and 3 more films. So I think I was part of this unlearning journey, and was pretty instrumental in being able to push some boundaries in connecting language, connecting tech and others.
Yeah. And that's true for multiple industries, right? Like even for commerce and retail. Like I feel like we are probably where the US was in the 50s or 60s.
I don't agree to this theory at all.
Okay, that's my thought. I'll finish mine and then I'll run through. But even for example, grocery, right? I feel like we're still very much where Western Europe was in the 60s or the US in the 60s, and I would love to hear what you think. And then there are a few other interesting industries like banks, for example, right? Or financial services. It's like if you look at financial services and banking in India, it's highly profitable. It's a very large industry. It's almost the opposite in the US. But if you go 50 years ago in the US, it was somewhat similar. Like the dominant consumer retail banking and the financial services companies 50, 60 years ago sort of resemble the kind of banks that we have today. So maybe, and I'm curious to hear what you think, and obviously it'll be very different. But I think what India will look like 50 years from now versus what it looks like today in a lot of these industries, it might follow a similar path, but maybe not.
I don't agree for a reason which is very simple, that India is a very age-old society. We are a society of recorded history of more than 3,000 years. And US is just a 300-year-old society in a sense. So our belief systems have been ingrained very, very differently, and it's very difficult to change our belief systems. And that's why we are not able to change as fast as what other countries are able to do in that sense, especially China and some other
Do you
countries.
think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
There's nothing good or bad.
Oh.
It's not about making a judgment on anything, but India will have its own understanding. It will have its own way of doing things. We will find that westernization happening in some percent of the population of this country, but the rest of the country won't follow that.
Not westernization.
Westernization or
Globalization in some
or
ways.
the change.
Let me ask you something. What's your ambition for India a couple decades out? Like, where do you think we should get to or can get to?
I think we have to be a much happier nation. We were discussing how can we make life more beautiful out here? How should we live in a much better environment? I think we can't judge the nation from the size of the economy alone. I think size of
That's
like
actually very
five
true.
elements make the planet. I think there has to be 5 elements which will make this country.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different thought process. Like if I was thinking about 5 decades out, the ambition for the country, it always stems from improving as many people's quality of life as we can. Simple as that. I think everyone can agree to that. Like we want to sitting in a position where the quality of life that the average Indian has today across the entire.
But again, you are comparing the quality of life with other people. Maybe they are more happier in
No,
this
I'm not
stage of
comparing. I'm
life.
not comparing. No. I'm not even getting into comparison. I'll get to comparison later. But I think we can all agree, and everyone in any nation would agree that across the pyramid, somebody's quality of life today, 5 decades out, should be exponentially better. Right? Quality of life. Forget about money, etc. But when I look at quality of life as a parameter, right, the ultimate input metric that's the most important is GDP per capita. Right? Like if I just think about it as it's like that is the most
That's one numerical input. Yes.
No, it's one input, and you're absolutely right. I agree with you that there are multiple nuanced inputs that feed into it. But like the sledgehammer input is GDP per capita. Like if that's going up, it's very difficult. The country's going in the wrong direction. You get what I'm saying? Like in general, yeah, there could be other problems also. There could be societal problems, could be political problems.
So no debate on that. That's one of the inputs on which.
To build a happier country, right? And so
I don't know whether happier, but it can be a better place to live in. Yes, for sure.
So like if I had to condense that into what I would do it a little bit more numerically, and coming to also the belief system that I had growing up, is that I think it's just like, and we've gone into a crazy tangent, but I think it's like, the ambition is 20-25x GDP per capita from where we are today. What does that India look like, right? I'm excited for that thought process, and I think that could be, maybe it doesn't look like the US, you're right. It's not more so about westernization, but I think like we need a lot more people thinking along those lines, like that have that ambition to say, okay, you're right, India's got a very different belief system, it's got a very different set of values, but in that set of values, in those circumstances, how do I build a country that has got 20x the GDP per capita than it has today? And what does that country look like? Because there is that sort of mold that exists, but yeah, it might look different from the US or other countries, but yeah.
But I don't know whether Indians want that or not also.
Which is actually very interesting that you say that.
No, I have a very interesting analogy to make here. Maybe Rana can help me in terms of numbers. Look at the cinema as an industry and what is the size of one movie which does that. A blockbuster would do $1 billion plus.
Yes, globally. Like Hollywood films.
More than $1.5 billion.
Yes, yeah. Like an Avatar.
Like Mission Impossible or something.
And our size of the entertainment, Hollywood, Bollywood plus all the Tollywoods and the Collywoods of the world would not be more than how much? Less than 2 billion?
Less than 2 billion in terms of theatrical number.
In terms of theatrical number. There one movie can do that.
Yeah.
And still we have more watchers, but the number of tickets we sell is far, far higher than.
Yeah. So how do I take that industry and make it a $50 billion industry, $100 billion industry?
But everybody works on that premise. But whether
the question is, can it be, or do you?
Can it be, or the size of the economy? Everything will.
I think it can. I really do think it can.
I think you have not watched a movie now. Now this generation, you're the youngest of the lot, and you have not watched. You don't know what Bahubali was. You have not.
I watched. Yeah, I watched Bahubali. By the way, I did. I watched.
No, I checked upon everything, and you didn't know about Bahubali. Yeah.
I watched it with, when did it come out? About
8 years ago. Actually, 8 years ago.
It must be 10, 12 years.
When I was like,
damn. Yeah. You would have been 10 years old.
I watched it. Gone back to that.
Hey, without exaggeration, I watched it when I was like 14, 15. So I don't remember all of it now. Okay. But yeah, I did watch it when I was 14.
So the way we have been discussing about content and the way things are changing.
Like for us, content also, so like in the movies, we're almost like a mirror to society, right? In some ways. And whether you watch Hindi films, Telugu, if you watch the successful films of those years, you will somewhere see how the country has changed or how the belief systems have changed. Because almost pretty much a mirror in that sense. Like if you take, for example, there's a film that we talk about. We spoke about Bahubali, right? It's a Telugu film made with very, very Indian ethos. The storytelling is similar to that of Mahabharata or the Ramayana, where we come from those big epic tales, right? Now take for the example a film like Kapoor and Sons that came in Bombay. Now that's another segment of culture which very few people in India will connect to. Like it's impossible for that film to be made in Telugu or Tamil. The idea won't even germ out of that. So you start seeing how each society is changing, what that city looks like, what those people look like in those feature films.
Yeah. Is it more? I mean, is it a function of like culture or like again socioeconomic status? Like, is it like
it's people, right? Like
would a wealthy Hyderabadi family enjoy that movie? Probably, but not like the scale that, let's say, Bahubali would have. So is it again more a function of like where people are from an income perspective, where they can relate to things?
It's not really an income perspective. Like, that's something that I always used to think. Where like KB has a very nice way of explaining things of India 1, 2, and 3, which really is popular. And I think cinema was the one thing that keeps cutting across, and that's why he and I become friends. He's like, how does this stuff cross across, right? And if you take, for example, like people in different parts of the country, like take for example Tamil cinema. if you see filmmakers, if you see actors, there's a certain sense of social change. There will always be films that are extremely rooted to culture. There will be pieces of culture that they will want to reflect back on. If you take Telugu, for example, you'll see a much more scale-based capitalist society where people want things in scale. You see the homes will be bigger.
They want to make money.
They want to make money. I'm saying there is that aspiration which will cut across in our cinema as well. So the culture of the people is always what reflects. And it breaks the economy scale very, very quickly. Like a big superstars fan in Telugu could be a billionaire, could be somebody who's driving his car, could also be the one working in his house, right? All of them like the same star. So that cuts across money in every single way. Why is Rajinikanth the star? All of us are fans of Rajinikanth.
But do you feel there's going to be some sort of standardization? For example, you have a lot more movies coming out. Like you said, like we were talking about documentaries, movies on sports. I think a lot of talk about having basically more movies with women in lead roles, right? Or more prominent roles. So do you feel like there are some of these broader values which will cut across various movie industries within the country? Or do you feel like there is still multiple different directions in which the industry is going to go?
I think each of the industries will have something very, very local to offer for their audiences in their language, their culture, which might or might not travel across. But there will be cinema that is pretty universal to India in some ways, which is, because our basic principles, funda of being Indian, relationship with family, relationship with siblings, all of that is pretty similar whichever part of the country you go to, right? And that cinema with scale and spectacle will be things that every Indian will watch in the theaters, which is what has been happening now. And that, I think, will form what the Indian entertainment industry is. Doesn't matter which town you come from, what language the film is made. Everybody will watch.
I look at things cinema as when we started doing business, we looked at one movie, Dil Chahta Hai, which was the first kind of a multiplex or urban-centric movie which was made.
Yeah.
And wherever that movie did well, we opened our Pantaloon store. So that was the benchmark we always looked at. And then the multiplex became quite big. Multiplex came into cities, the price of the tickets, the cinema collection. And Bollywood started producing for the multiplexes. Now multiplexes audience have multiple things to watch.
Yeah.
They have the content and the story form telling has changed to 10 hours, 12 hours, 20 hours, and 2.5 hours has no meaning. Friday first show has no meaning. So the whole belief system on which Bollywood was formed, which was multiplex in a significant way, is changing its course. And they will reinvent oneself. Again, unlearning has to happen in every industry, and Bollywood is going through that unlearning. In fact, Telugu and the other industries had learned it much before that.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I think like when you talk about belief systems and in any industry, I think you're absolutely right. They keep evolving, right? Different circumstances. It starts with multiplexes. Then a Netflix comes in, changes the game for that cohort of customer, right? I think it's just like...
No, but the problem is something else. The problem is the Bollywood believes that they have not cohorted that customer the way we cohort the customers and the way you might be cohorting the customer. So that's very important for us to understand how India operates.
Bollywood is a larger unlearning in a sense.
Like there was a movie which was called Hum Aapke Kaun. I don't know how many people have watched that movie. It was a movie wherein it was a movie meant for 0 to 80-year-old. And every caste, every community. 13 songs and that was how many weddings and one death.
And one cute dog.
One cute dog.
And that cut across India in a very, very different manner.
And weddings became all weddings were a replica of that wedding which was shown in that movie.
No, so what I was saying is like I think all belief systems have like one fundamental unit that doesn't change. And if you stick to that unit, all the iteration on top of it, on the belief system, ends up putting in the right direction. So in this case, right, in any industry, and like it'll change. Right now we're talking about like industry and business. The fundamental root in my mind is the customer. It's as simple as that, right? So the customer comes in, you talk to the customer. Customer today is saying, we want multiplexes. Tomorrow says we want, streaming and other sort of digital services. You keep talking to that person. As long, for sure that if the customer is saying what you're doing is good, then you're in the right direction.
We look at it differently.
Yeah, same. I have a full different...
Totally. I have a view that consumer has a certain amount of time he has to consume entertainment.
I'm talking
about, let's say, entertainment or clothes or grocery. The way he consumes keeps on changing.
Sure.
The form of consumption, the form of payment, that is what is changing, and that change is happening quite fast.
Yeah, but
you can't say that this will operate this way only. I believe that today a supermarket and hypermarkets in the malls will not be easy.
I agree with you.
Multiplexes will have to undergo some shifts.
I agree with you. And that why is that happening is because the
So,
customers.
but then
are having
who
that
read
format.
it? Then who read it? How do you read it? How do you change yourself? How? But
You just talk to the customer, no?
the customer will
fine,
tell
like-
you, but you will not come to know.
Like it's like this,
You
right?
talk to
You will stick to your belief systems. That's what happens
see,
in
you make-
entrepreneurship.
I think as a founder, you don't have the luxury to stick to your belief
Yeah,
systems.
exactly.
I think
But that's all-
true.
multiple, yeah. So I think one of the biggest,
Like he was still having
Yeah.
a belief system that US it still happens that way, and that is what will happen here.
No. That's like totally. That's like that's not the thought process.
See,
at
it's
all.
like-
the
I
thought
mean-
process is just like the way that like when you talk to like a dozen customers a week or 2 dozen customers a week, and you just talk to them, right? I honestly think that you do that enough, you get put in the right direction 99 times out of 100. So my belief system is not, oh, this happened, and that's exactly right. Like why, like hypermarkets and supermarkets work phenomenally well in the US. They don't work in India, right? So I actually think the opposite. I think you copy paste.
I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm saying that they are changing the form and content. And now the entry and exit has to become very important for a supermarket.
Sure, exactly. That's
So
what I'm
if you're
saying.
in a mall, the entry exits are not good. It's not about that. Not about people's convenience methodology and proximity has changed now.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So I'm saying that if you just copy paste what has worked in another country in India, it will fail. Absolutely. And that's because you need to talk to the customer in India. There are a lot of things that are fundamental that I think are not too different from other, like some things that are fundamental to just a customer being a human being that don't dramatically change when you go into other countries. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot of nuance that comes in with a customer sitting in Bombay versus a customer sitting in Indore versus a customer sitting in San Francisco versus a customer sitting in Beijing, right? And so, for me, it's all about just like, I honestly believe I have a very simple thought process. How do you know that you're going in the right direction or not as an entrepreneur? Or as, I think at least in like multiple different industries, you just talk to enough customers, right? You talk to them every day, every week. 9 times out of 10, you get put in the right direction. In my mind, I've seen that. Like I think we've been in a position where over the course, at least in my experience, over the course of the past 2 years, we've been in a position where we've had to make multiple like game-changing make or break decisions, right? And looking back at them, I think we got at least the big ones right. And the reason why we did is because we just kept talking to customers.
No, I think talking to customers, also talking to the customers who pays you is a more important criteria. Like let's take the case of cinema. The customer who is paying money will not watch if he doesn't want to pay you money, he'll not watch the movie. You can take any comments from it, it is not worth it.
See, and also like where I was differing with what you spoke, or rather how our business is a bit different. We're not selling the same product again and again.
Sure.
We're consistently selling something different.
Yeah.
The customer wants to come in there and then start enjoying himself. It's hard for him to say what film he's going to enjoy.
Yeah, that's true.
So we have to consistently keep delivering products and understand, okay, now this is, what are the core 5 or 7 emotions that I'm touching in this customer?
Yeah.
If he comes to my cinema, what's he going to take back, right?
Yeah.
But
But
that's very hard for the customer to articulate ever.
True, but like viscerally from the conversations that you have from people, in that community, that they're not going to enjoy a Kapoor and Sons type film. They're going to enjoy a Bahubali type film. That comes from, maybe it doesn't have to be literally a conversation, right? Where someone says, I don't want a,
But nobody
an
at that
upscale
time, no
family
customer
film.
would have told them to make Bahubali. Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Nobody could have imagined that.
See, I'm saying that, yeah, exactly.
Nobody would have told you make Bahubali, but they would have said, hey, they would not have said, but you would have gotten a sense when you talk to people in that community that a story about, or it doesn't have to be explicit. Like they're not going to tell you, hey, build an iPhone, hey, build a 10-minute grocery. They're not going to say exactly that, right? But you'll get a sense talking to them that making a story about a couple in Canada with I think in Punjab or something, a family like from a wealthy family in Punjab, them going through marital strife is not an interesting story versus a story about mythology and story about the grandioseness of like Indian history, right? That resonates a lot more. You get that sense talking to people in that community. I'm sure if I spoke to people,
the thing is, success comes in cinema when you're watching something for the first time and you're blown away with it.
Yeah.
It's impossible for someone to say that this is what I want. When Bahubali was being made,
I would say the same
twice
with-
more
I
expensive
would
than
say-
anything that was ever being made.
I would say the same with quick commerce and what Harsh and all have built. It's absolutely
so
new.
I think one of the biggest
it's new.
learnings, unlearnings, learnings, relearnings that we've had is there's a very popular conception or misconception, or depending on how you see it, that in the online fashion / e-commerce / apparel space, everyone is looking for a discount, right? And I think to an extent, maybe that is correct. I think and the marketplaces and the other brands of the world have kind of spoiled us, where there is literally a filter where you search for prices from low to high, right? I think the fact that is the most used filter tells you that, hey, customers are always expecting a deal. But I think for better or worse, when we started off back in 2013, we didn't have the money to spend on marketing or burning, right? We never had the luxury of actually over investing in our CACs and hoping that over a period of time the customer comes back again and again and it starts making sense. So we had a very different journey where from the first order itself, you had to make money off the customer. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense to build the business. And I think with most decisions that we have made, I think the core philosophy of profitable growth, sustainable growth has always been there. We've actually kind of changed our philosophy in the middle. And I'm going to give an interesting example of the first time we raised funding, right? So it's obviously very different for us. Started the company with 5 lakhs pooled in together, right? Took it to a company that was doing an annual run rate of 30 crores profitably. So we always reinvested in the business again and again. This is the first time we get money, right? You can spend on branding, you can get more senior hires. Let's basically focus on growth. A lot of opportunities open up with money which you didn't have for the first 4 or 5 years. So somewhere I feel like we kind of also got stuck in that sort of cycle where, hey, now that we've raised money, we've got investors, there are expectations, we need to grow a lot faster because that is when you're going to get your next round of investment, and that is how every other startup scales, right? Especially in the online space. So I remember for the first couple of months after we raised our first round of funding, we kind of got into a bit of a loop, where you're spending more and more money to hit certain numbers every month. Then the next month has to be higher than the previous month.
Yep.
Then, okay, hey, organically, this month is not going to be the highest month. So do we do a sale at the end of the month? We've not hit our targets. Let's do one more sale. And I think at some point you realize that if you keep spoiling the customer with more and more discounts, the moment you try going back to normal the next month, you've kind of spoiled the customer, right? And I think that's what a lot of online brands and marketplaces have done. So we kind of, took a step back. We realized, hey, every month you cannot necessarily grow at a certain pace. It's okay to have certain down months as long as from a longer point of view, you're growing sustainably, you're doing the right things, your prices, your products, your marketing are making sense, your CACs are making sense. And I think that sort of learning and relearning that we had was very, very interesting. At a time when you're seeing all the other brands in a similar space, burning more and more money, spending on marketing, doing a lot more discounts, and somewhere, you kind of get that FOMO feeling. Am I the odd one out in the room? Or am I not seeing something that everyone else is? And I guess it probably varies from brand to brand or industry to industry. But in a way, I'm glad that we sort of unlearned and then we relearned, but we're kind of back to basics because that's what the brand was built off. So yeah, I think we've had a pretty interesting back and forth journey when it comes to pricing and how to build the business.
I'm curious, when Rana was talking, he was talking about his school and that sort of gave him bigness and scale. And also, being from a film family and film community, that sort of taught him storytelling, and there were, elements of that. What about your background has led you to have the belief system that you have?
So my background is actually pretty varied in that sense. It would lead to a fairly confused belief system because I've done, from an education point of view, I did science in the 11th and 12th because it was one of those things where you get good marks in the 10th, you tend to take science.
You were the other guy.
Yeah. So it was that, right? And then after that, okay, you either become an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. And if you don't get into a good college, you do commerce. Right? I think that for better or worse, that was a sort of understood way of how your career should shape up. My mom told me, don't take engineering. You're not going to travel 2 hours every day. You're a lazy person. I didn't take medicine because I didn't like biology. So the only other option was taking law, right? So I did law for 5 years.
Oh.
Through my stint with GLC, I realized this is probably not something that I'm going to end up doing. So I did journalism, I did advertising for a bit, I learned tattooing as well. So I've done all kinds of things and I would have a fairly confused belief system. But I think the only thing that kept me going through, or the only consistency throughout was, hey, if I don't like something, I'm not going to do it. Right? I'll try 20 different things out. But till I genuinely don't believe in what I want to do, until I'm not genuinely excited, I am probably not going to do this for the rest of my life. And I think I was also fortunate enough to have the privilege where I can take a couple of years to figure stuff out. Right? I think a lot of people may not have the same cushion, right? Where, hey, you're done with college, now you need to get a job, you need to start contributing. So I think having that luxury of time and the luxury to fail and experiment with stuff, I think really, really helped out. But it's also
so you wanted to rush when you're building a business.
Yeah, and I think it also gave me the opportunity to try multiple things out. But the one philosophy that we've tried inculcating from day one at the Soul Store, irrespective of team size, irrespective of scale, is make sure that you're creating a fun work environment where people actually look forward to coming to work. Because all 4 of us have been unhappy employees. All 4 of us have been the kind of people who will give you 40, 50, 60% just to get the job done. look at the clock and
How
bounce
do you
on a
make people
Friday.
happy now? Just tell me that.
So I think we've
By
got
putting
a...
in some table tennis and ping pong tables.
No, so I think the first thing that surprised a lot of people is I have this one
You have
interesting
people.
story. One of the earlier interviews that I'd taken, I remember this candidate, very, very nice, young, energetic guy. He comes, wearing a shirt, wearing trousers, wearing a suit, like all ready for a proper interview. And this was maybe, I don't know, like 6-7 plus years ago. And I was wearing shorts, right? Because it's a very informal sort of setting. If we have a meeting, we kind of dress up because thoda, you have to basically keep it in mind. And he asked me, hey, I have an interview with Harsh, where can I meet him? He didn't believe that I would be the person who would be taking his interview because of how I was dressed. Interview went really well. He joined the company, did really well. But I think small things, like we don't have a dress code. People can sit where they want. Most of the people, fortunately, in our company, I think are between 20 to 25 now. We've got more senior people. So the overall environment that we've created, I think, is a more fun environment. People chill a lot after work.
I would say a casual environment.
It's
not a stiff environment.
Absolutely
But how
not.
do you make people happy?
I think people are happy to come to, because I think when you think of school and when you think of work, right, you usually think of a more formal setting. Hey, I have to wake up, I have to wear a tie.
But that alone makes people happy?
It plays a very, very large role.
Okay.
Because I think comfort, when you're spending 40, 45, maybe 50 hours a week in a setting, whether it's your house or it's college or it's an office, I think feeling comfortable in terms of how you can look, how you can feel, having other people of a similar age group. We have so many ex-TSS members who basically keep dropping by at our office whenever they're in the area. They'll just come, have a cup of coffee, chill with us, have a chat and bounce, right? Like no expectations, no agenda. And I think just creating an environment where people are comfortable
But then how do you build discipline?
I think we are very, very clear that it's A plus B, it's not A or B, right? I think when they see everyone else next to them, I think team culture plays a very important role. When you're in a team or when you're in an organization where you know that the organization has a certain expectation in terms of performance, people are very, very clear that these founders will give us the luxury to be who we want to be as long as we're getting the job done, right? So I don't think it's comfort at the cost of discipline. I think we've got a fairly sensible, oiled machine where people understand there are certain privileges but certain expectations as well. So yeah, there's no right answer, but I think when they see the founders working hard, but they also see the founders having fun and cracking jokes in the middle of interviews and meetings, I think it kind of just builds that community and that culture of how TSS is.
So, there's a very interesting point, and as Harsh was talking, one big part of the belief system is also just wanting to be excited about what you do, right? And like there's a deep sense of like you guys building out the Soul Store because you enjoyed it and you love what you do, right? So why do you guys do what you do? Like, and it's like, you've been working on this for decades.
We have a very similar ethos of that. We really enjoy what we do.
Yeah.
And
but what is it about your work that makes you enjoy what you do?
See, like I have a difficulty to answer it as work because it's my lifestyle. It's not a job, and like that's the first thing that I do in interviews. If you're coming here for a job, leave, because this is your lifestyle. This is who you are. The stories that you see on the street are the stories that you will make back. People that you meet, what you see and what you hear becomes your business in the entertainment world, right? Because unless you know life enough, you're not going to get to the movies enough. And so that's first us. Can I do the same thing for 24 hours for every single day of my life? Yes, I can. And unless that energy and ethic is there, this is a hard place for people to really stay in.
Yeah, I'm sure. What about you, Ms. Biyani?
I think I've done introspection on what excites me, or I think it has been the joy of creation. The joy of creating something which millions can enjoy.
Yeah.
And whatever you have learned, how do you share that learnings?
Yeah.
So I believe I'm in a position right now wherein we created something for the last 35, 40 years, multiple things, and it doesn't exist or it got destroyed. And now you can look at life very differently. I'm able to look at things from a very dispassionate manner. You are able to see people through what people say, what they mean. So you possess some kind of extraordinary, some judgment of power through which you can see things. And then again, how can we look at sharing these experiences through which people can learn? Because a journey of creation of multiple formats, multiple businesses, and now looking at them from a rare view, very different view.
Yeah.
So the amount of mistakes we would have made during the journey is something which I would love to share with a lot of young entrepreneurs like you all. So that's the whole idea at this moment. And that's the joy of new creation, because ultimately your one's knowledge can result into many, many more successes in entrepreneurship, and that can create more things.
For sure. Yeah, and I think what like the reason why, I work 100-hour weeks and our team works 100-hour weeks, I think it's just like very similar to what you just mentioned and similar to what Rana mentioned as well. I think for us, it's like, there are very few teams, I think in most people's professional lives, right? There are very few teams that actually have an opportunity to build a real generational company, like an actual iconic company that takes things to the next level for the country. And I think what we've realized over the course of the past 2 years, and frankly, for the first maybe year or so, we didn't have this clarity, but now we do, which is, what we're building, right? I truly believe will probably be a generational company, like over the course of multiple decades. And very few people have that opportunity. Now, when you realize that, it also has this opposite view where you're like, I hope I don't blow it, right? Like, you don't want to blow it. Because if you're, and this actually, I'll give credit to a lot of our investors also, is that they're like, we've never seen something like this. You now are sitting on a seat where this could actually be, if we do it well, a Larsen Turbo, a Marico, Asian Paints, a D-Mart, right? Like these sort of large generational companies. And then you don't want to be in a position where because at the end of the day, the only barrier between where we are today and doing that is whether we have it in ourselves to do it. And when you realize that, you really don't want to be in a position where there's a flaw in your system that makes you fail in achieving that outcome. And that outcome means like not only creating a valuable company for your employees, your investors, but most importantly is like actually having the opportunity for tens, if not hundreds of millions of people to enjoy that product. And that's also why it started, right? The reason why KV and I got so excited about what we were doing is because when we just started the first geography and we started talking to people and we realized that they loved it, right? Viscerally. And they started, spending their money on Zepto. We were like, wow, this is going to be an unbelievable product. It needs to get to everyone, as many people as it possibly can. So that's what keeps me excited, right? It's just like, if we do it well, there's like this huge, outcome, and like, that's why we're so hard on ourselves, right? We're very, very like as a culture, like we're very self-aware. Like at least I think what we do well, we're very intellectually honest. We push ourselves a lot.
Like except the forever
Yeah,
wheel, I have nothing else to do.
What are your favorite mistakes, I think, if I can put it that way?
Yeah, favorite mistake. That's fun. That will be a fun thing to share about. I think all of us will have favorite mistakes.
I think the first mistake is doing too many things.
That's a good note to take back.
Second mistake is we were not the best of, we were the best of creators in a way. Whatever formats we created were successful, whether it was a Central or a Bread Factory or a Food Hall or a Big Bazaar or any format. We created our NBFC, Future Capital Holdings, which has become a bank now. We created the first real estate fund in India, first private equity, multiple things we did. But I don't think so one organization can handle so much of growth and so much of changes at the same time. We were not tuned. Secondly, we were a little ahead of time in doing quite a lot of things. So we believed in something called one view of the customer. That we got into gymming business, we got into restaurants, cinema, consumption. We thought we'll capture every wallet of the consumers, and we were there, but there was no technology available then. So we were doing too many things without the technology or a lot of other infrastructure in place. We're a little ahead of time. Let us put it that way. Secondly, we played, because India was not funded on equity at that time, because retail couldn't get funded on equity, we played on debt. There was a lot of debt in the system. I think that was, the balance sheet was not strong to do too many things.
Oh.
And so when COVID happened, there was nowhere to hide in a sense. COVID happened, 65% of our stores were in malls. And malls were the last to open, and nobody wanted to come to a mall to buy grocery then. And by that time, Zepto of the world and a lot of local e-commerce, and everything changed during COVID.
It's a different concept.
So the whole world changed. And so we had no other, in terms of mistakes, I think growing too fast is also a mistake. Assuming that the growth will keep on, we compounded growth for the first 25, 28 years at 30%.
Oh, wow.
So
unbelievable.
So, and that can't happen forever.
Yeah. No, but the ambition is inspiring, and I think like that's what I've learned from the Future Group and your book. The innate ambition is just like, that is something that I think any company can benefit from. That's awesome.
No, but I think whatever we did, we were very close to the consumers. And we never had. I think consumers liked whatever we created.
That's true. Yeah.
So luckily, except for the 2 movies which I made, which didn't do well. Consumers, I think, and we also, only one thing we liked about us was understanding India at its own terms.
Yeah.
Still, we love to do that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm very fascinated by cinema as a business.
Yeah.
Because cinemas understand customer more better than anybody else.
It reflects India.
There are only 2 people who understand, I would say, consumers of India. One is the politician and one is the cinema people.
Yeah. What about you, Harsh? What are your favorite mistakes?
So I think smaller mistakes, obviously smaller scale, but we're a predominantly licensed merchandise brand. And I think there's a broader perception of the company and the success we've built is over the number of licenses, the varieties of licenses that we've built, and our understanding of fans, right? Hey, like as a fan of, say, this superhero or this cartoon or this movie, these are the kind of products you'd like, these are the kind of designs you'd like, this is how you would like me to market this to you as a fan. And I think sometimes, when you get very, very involved in something, especially because you're a fan yourself, it becomes difficult to zoom out. I'll give you a couple of examples. So there were a few licenses, I think, in the larger set of 150 plus that we have, where we took certain decisions, I think, more as fans rather than as businessmen. And I think that's a mistake we made. So there's a bit of emotion involved. Sometimes there's a bit of sunk cost involved. It's like, hey, I'm a fan. Let me over-invest. Let me figure these things out. We'll do this differently. We'll do that differently. But if I had to look at it very, very practically, a certain license or a certain decision at a certain scale requires a certain amount of investment in terms of money and my time. And if it's not making sense, I think probably not stepping out soon enough, I think were a few mistakes that we made. And in general, because we are a largely creative company, we're a product company essentially.
You all got in personal biases and prejudices into decision making.
So I think when we took licenses, yes, because I think the advantage of that is when you are a fan yourself and you understand how to maximize the value of a license, I think the best position to do it from is from the point of view of a fan. But having said that, even as a fan, with all the kind of access that you have, if something is still not working, I think sometimes knowing when to take a step back is very, very important. And when you're really invested because you've grown up with certain characters and certain IPs, it becomes difficult to kind of cut the cord or draw that balance. But we've made our mistakes and we've had our learning. So I think
at the age of 20, you can't make any mistakes still.
No, I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, that's you're too young to make mistakes now.
I'm actually realizing talking to all of you, and it's a flaw that I'm actually trying to work on. It's becoming clearer actually hearing it from you that all of you guys are, and like in varying extents, but all of you guys are very creative people. I'm not a creative guy. I'm actually just like comes from my background also in the school. That's like a very numbers, mechanical, methodical guy. And like that's the way that we've built the company. Like very just like, I mean, if you go into our company, like the amount of data, it's just like, it's brain damage. It'll give a lot of people brain damage. Right? Like we have data on like the most nuanced things. We analyze it. We're a lot more numbers. We're a lot more methodical. We're a lot more execution, governance, discipline. We're not as much
feeling.
Yeah, we're not as much feeling. We're not as much big picture. Like, we don't think strategy, right? We don't have a strategy. We don't think strategy at all.
But that's very interesting here.
Yeah, we are just like numbers.
So I always used to call it, in the kind of organization design which we created at Future Group, there was a creation and then there was the execution bit. And I always believed that creation side was much stronger than the execution part.
We're all about execution. Like we actually suck at, and I'm realizing this was probably one of the mistakes also that I'm trying to get better on, is thinking creative. We're just execution.
That's okay. I think we need executors.
Yeah, I think it's easy to sit for another half an hour and come up with 20 great ideas, but I think
But if you can't execute it, that's it. It's all.
Yeah, I think eventually it definitely boils, and it's also crazy the kind of scale that you guys have hit, right? I'm going to take your self-feedback with a pinch of salt that you guys only focus on execution, but irrespective to hit that scale.
Thank you.
And to also have so much more big picture thought, which you feel like is still probably not a part of your core process, means there is only so much more headroom, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think, but like, you're right. I think there's the balance though, in the sense that you should also not miss out on the next big picture. Like if there's a big shift happening, you should not miss out on that because you're too much in the weeds. So I think like we're trying to find that balance. But what about you, Rana? What's your favorite mistake?
My favorite mistake is, I think somewhere what KB had articulated earlier is doing something much earlier in time than it's supposed to be. So one thing that I did after visual effects is I ran a gaming company for
Really?
Yeah, called FX Labs. I was with for part of 2.5 years at least.
Rana is a serial entrepreneur.
Wow,
And
absolutely.
we made video games for pre-mobile
Okay.
on computer, on CD-ROMs.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I used to sell 20,000. The pirate used to sell a lakh, and life didn't look as smooth. And lost all my money there.
Okay.
And then I became an actor. I said, now I'm not going to invest for IP. I'm going to be IP.
Yeah.
That's how life moved from there.
Oh, that's fair. So, actually, side anecdote, I was addicted to video games as a kid. Yeah, like seriously. Like,
Same here. I was addicted to it. And I think part of what happened with you was happening with me at that point. I was more a fan of video games.
Yeah.
And the fact that I knew others in India didn't play it enough, I wanted to do that. And I realized I was not supposed to do it at that point.
Yeah.
So it was a terrible one.
Yeah.
So how do prejudices and biases come into decision making here? How do we avoid that?
So like what I kept doing is every time I saw a problem, whether it's a mistake that I committed myself or something that I kept seeing happen, I just like right now the new organization of Spirit has all of those things incorporated, like things I've worked with entrepreneurs like yourself over time, right? Whether it's a mistake I make or you make, I try to pick it up and put it off into my company. Like two things that we try to do in for the broader perspective of what Indian entertainment film companies are, right? None of the companies go beyond the founder. It's,
None of them, yeah.
You remove the founder from the center of that company means nothing. But that's not the same case with a Disney or all of those others, right?
Yeah.
Now, how do I do that from day zero? What was the first agenda of building this company. So that was problem one. Problem two became attrition. We don't have, like in the rest of the world, we don't have film schools or others that are sending out 100,000 students a year understanding film or the business of film. All of us have winged it in this industry. 90 to 95% are trained within this industry to work for this industry, and we do nothing else apart from this, right? So it's pretty unstructured to find people, and which means it requires a lot of training, a lot of time, a lot of handholding, a lot of allowing people to make mistakes, because otherwise, unless you've done that, you don't learn, because there's no school to teach you that these are the mistakes. You got to do it yourself. And the problem became that I couldn't hold them for beyond a time, because the corporates started coming in, the bigger networks or bigger telecom, other companies that wanted to be in the entertainment world came. And just the prices were rising. So then I said, unless you create ownership, there's no other way of loyalty in the entertainment world, at least. Because I said, I work hard, it's my lifestyle because I own this company. And how do I create a sharing economy? So right now, to many people, I said, I'm not building a company, I'm building a club, which will have about 35 or 40 people that will start owning it in the course of the next 3 to 5 years that can create products of entertainment and others in the same place. So I think these were mistakes I learned over time. And largest mistake is probably monopoly in some ways. Like most big businesses only taught that unless you're a monopoly, you don't get anywhere. And I feel if you're a shared economy, you can be far bigger than the monopoly that's out there in front of you.
Agreed.
And especially our business, right? See, the first thing that we require is not money in our business. It's an idea on a page, and that comes for free.
I envy that.
Yeah, that comes for free, and that comes with a lot of thinking. So I feel like unless we put the creative first, all of them will fall pretty quickly.
Yeah. No, I mean,
And how do you avoid the personal biases and prejudices in decision making?
Yeah.
Because you are very powerful in your company.
yeah, that's true. I think you have to put yourself in a position where you're intellectually honest and vulnerable with the people that are on your team, right? Like if you're in a position where, I mean, it's a very corny answer, cheesy answer, but I think
It is.
it's a cheesy answer.
I was like, hey, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, and then I'll tell you. So I'll tell you the cheesy answer, right? Basically, it's like if you give other people in your team, like, and I know it sounds like something that's very easy to say, very difficult to do, but if they're genuinely comfortable pushing you back, they're genuinely comfortable that they can yell at you, tell you that what you're doing is BS, and there'll be no consequence to the relationship.
But if you are successful, the media will make you a star.
That
You'll be
is
a
like
superhero.
that's a different
You have to
conversation.
deal with that.
So the media is on the opposite with us, which is great. Like they've actually just hammered us, which is good, by the way. I keep telling people people keep asking what's the biggest problem with your business. I was like, it's the media. That's the biggest problem. The journalism is the biggest problem with our business. But anyway, it's like if you actually are in a position where your investors and your team feels like they can say, hey, Aadit, this is bullshit. It's clear bullshit. This is the very structured reason why. And they have they've seen you concede in the past. then you will be in a position where people will push back, not let you make
But
a
let me
mistake.
tell you something. Like you will get success in something, and that will become your beliefs. And
If you let it get to your head.
no, and that belief that won't work maybe subsequently because some
Subsequently.
things have changed.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then that's a mistake. And that's a scenario.
So
where
we
you
are
can-
all victim of our past successes.
That's
which
true.
is
Yeah,
which is
I
true.
guess.
Like
I think it helps
I
in-
try to solve that in some ways where right now the top team. So I have no CEO, CXO. We just removed all of that. They're just partners or not, right?
Okay.
So and the idea is I don't want to have a company of employees. We want to have a company of partners eventually. And the idea of partners is they need to have something that is way more superior knowledge than I do
Correct.
by themselves, either accomplished or accomplishing in this world or studied it. So that kept fixing it because then there is one core decision that I don't make, they make for me, right? So that's how I've been trying to do it, but I don't know how far I'll
similar.
reach. But
Like if you look
see,
at
if I have 10 decisions that I take, can 3 be taken by them?
Yeah.
And I just follow.
Yeah.
So I just make sure there's a financial backbone that wrong decision or right decision doesn't fall or cost us too much.
Exactly.
But unless if by the end of 3 years all 10 can be taken by somebody else, which means I've hit that success
I
parameter.
don't think you ever reach to have 4 founders with
That's
very
amazing.
different thought processes, understanding strengths and weaknesses. I think that's definitely one thing that's helped. And a lot of investors, current and potential, have asked us, hey, usually we prefer founders with 2 companies. 1 means you're taking all the decision making and the stress. 3 means, hey, there are too many opinions. 4 and 5 really means who's taking the decision at the end of the day. And I think what has genuinely helped us to have differences of opinion but not clashes is I think we all work with the same goal eventually, right? We'll have different opinions, different ideas, different ways of reaching it. But I think having that very, very clear trust and understanding that we are eventually doing it for the same goal means I don't feel bad or I don't feel angry when I concede to a different point of view, because although I don't agree with you, I know you're doing it for the same reason. And I think as long as you're on the same page with your broader objective, you will always have clashes, especially in a creative space. And what we've also done, especially for the 4 of us, is when we started off, we were 23, 24 years old. So we were essentially the age group that we were targeting, right? Or maybe slightly younger. Today, we very, very consciously kind of take a step back from certain creative decision-making processes, whether it's on the product or in the design or the marketing. And we keep joking about this because I handle licensing at the source, but I only wear plain t-shirts. And I'm not going to wear a graphic superhero t-shirt. But if I had to design products for myself, if I had to make decisions for myself, we would not be the sole source. I think,
Remove the prejudices.
yeah. So I think I don't think you can ever completely free yourself from decision-making errors. But I think consciously just stepping back and not putting yourself in a position where you have to be involved in certain decisions, or you probably give your feedback, but you are very, very clear that the final say will be taken by someone else. You have to eventually trust your team, because I think more people thinking in the same direction is less likely to have those same biases coming back again and again. And that's what we've tried doing at the Soul Store.
Yeah, it's like 3 things basically. Like 1, you want to create a culture where people are actually like happy to call out bullshit. Not just the partner, right? Like people have said in town halls what you're saying, other this bullshit. Like I had an anecdote with a relatively junior guy that just came to me after a town hall and said, this statement that you said about like this team, it was just wrong, right? And like you have to really create a culture where people are comfortable doing that. That's 1. Secondly, I really resonated with what Rana said, which is you create like this set of owners that can take decisions for you, and you know they're doing it with the same good faith, right? Because they're also trying to build a great company. So even for us, right, we've got like someone that leads supply chain, someone that leads finance, someone that leads growth. All of those guys understand those subject matters with much more depth than I do. And so if they come to me and say with a high degree of authority that this is the supply chain decision we need to take, I'm like, okay, fair enough. I don't viscerally understand it, but I'm sure you have decades of experience. This is the right call. That's number 2. And then I think, number 3 is like, it's not just enough to get the expertise, you have to also make them owners, right? So if you have each of them own a meaningful chunk of the company, then you know that they're acting in the right spirit.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I have another question to ask Rana. How was your religious system beliefs have helped you in business or in your entrepreneurship journey? Or
So the religious systems were very interesting, sir, because my grandparents weren't very religious. My granddad was a filmmaker. He was less religious. My mother was very religious. So there was always a puja room in the house. Whether we were living in Chennai or Hyderabad, that was the first thing that we did was go into a puja room and then leave for your work. And then suddenly ACK came into my life when I was a kid. Again, that came through with my mom. And those gods became stories for me in a way. And there was a different relationship with culture altogether, right? And like I just feel like I didn't grow up because when I was 8 or 10 years old, or till about 14, I was reading Amar Chitrakatha comics, and I just worked for that.
But you must be reading other comics also.
I was other comics too, but
What about Archie's, Rich Rich?
not Archie's. I was more a Phantom Mandrake kind of guy.
Okay.
But to me, ultimately, the gods became heroes, right? They were stories to tell. They were very powerful stories to tell. They were stories that were really ancient. And I think that framed most of my ethic in filmmaking and storytelling and what I do. And more as I come out of movies and look at the other industries, I start realizing everybody's ultimately a content company is trying to tell a story, right? Whether someone who's trying to make a product, someone who's building a business, anything is ultimately telling a story for one thing. And we are guys who just keep telling many stories over time.
So how about Adil's story? I think his story is very interesting, na?
Yeah, we have a good about
School,
stories.
he's Stanford dropout.
Yeah, it's a fun story.
20-year-old,
Yeah.
belief in oneself, crazy, living in a hotel room.
I'd like to know some other sides, and then probably after the cameras are off, and then the'll be. Then I'll tell you if it'll become
larger set.
Yeah, then it'll become a film or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
And his love life. So there's
But that's today.
Starter founder to movie star very quick.
No, but today entrepreneur stories are getting much more
getting
popular,
unbelievable recognition. Yeah.
and I feel like that's really a change that I'm seeing in the country, from where there were only film stars that were stars.
Yeah.
There were some politicians that went into extreme pop culture. And now it's entrepreneurs that are actually becoming stars and somebody that you want to look up to. It never was the case.
Imagine the podcasts are getting popular.
See, there you go. And like, here you go. You have a podcast that has 20 million views. So life is different.
I think Ankit's like, I was 60 years too early. I would have been the startup star if I started like 50 years, 100%. Yeah.
No, he'll be one now, even in this process.
Yeah, even now, that's the crazy part.
I think it's not about, we are in a stage wherein I believe after making so many mistakes, you know so much about if somebody makes one mistake less, I think business is made out of one less mistake.
Yeah. No, it is about storytelling though, for sure. I mean, I realize like you're telling stories to the people that are joining you. You're telling stories to your investors. And it has to be a compelling story, right? And I also, like I mentioned initially, discounted the value of that, right? And I said it's actually all about numbers, right? But now I'm realizing that, see, the substance has to always be there. If you tell a story and the numbers are not there.
But tell me one thing. Like most of the people who got into this quick commerce business were very young, much younger than most of the startup people. Yeah. Is there any correlation between that?
I mean, the other folks that operate this space are also like 1.5 to 2 times my age. So.
No, I'm not talking about Blinkit.
Still half our age.
Or you're saying my co-founder?
No, other people, like your co-founder plus other people who came into this quick commerce business.
Oh, my team.
Not your team.
Generally, in the quick commerce world itself.
The quick commerce world.
There are more younger people who built this business than older people.
Are you saying like employees, investors, customers? What are you talking about?
No, competitors.
Oh, okay.
They have lesser patience too.
I guess, yeah. I mean, maybe it could be lesser patience.
Maybe something, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
lesser
have
patience.
Solving your own problems.
Yeah, I can't wait for 30 minutes. I
your
need
own
it in
problems.
5.
So once you become a little older, what happens to the business then? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Wow. That's another problem I'll add to the list of problems.
But that's a generation that's different, sir. It's every time it's a generation that's very different.
Yeah.
Like
But very younger people, this is not the age of getting into entrepreneurship, not 20 years. This is the new world.
It's very different, sir. Like, see, today's new world is actually quite like I told you about my niece. She's 8 years old. She lives in Bangalore. She came to Hyderabad for a weekend, and what she decided to do is put a lemonade stand in a park. Now, I couldn't do that when I was 7 or 8. I didn't even know how money would have operated, right? Like one thing that keeps
20 is the new 30.
Yeah, I guess.
30 is a new 20. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
These are pretty strange. How that today is like, see, what keeps me up at night always is there going to be a new generation that can't even sit and listen to static storytelling unless you're a game or unless you're involved.
Yeah.
Unless it's interactive, there will be a generation that anything static is going to be very boring. A book is going to be boring. One person talking is going to be boring. 2 people creating drama is going to be boring. Unless you're engaged, which is the gaming world.
Yeah.
That entire world is bigger than film, music, everything put together.
Yeah.
Why? Because you are the character. You're playing the character, right? Now, if that everything is starting to get gamified. Then what are the stories that you tell?
Yeah.
Then you're the storyteller. And that, I think the world is moving closer
I
and
think
closer
even
to that.
What about games making stories? Like I've actually, when I was growing up and I was addicted to games, I actually love the stories. I don't know if you,
Of course, yeah.
yeah. If you've played, there's Uncharted, like all those games I used to play as a kid.
And
phenomenal
they have
stories.
deep story, deep passion.
The Witcher, right? Yeah, like I used to.
So another thought which I had was the biggest change which we are going through in our times is the shift around technologies and how fast they are changing and pervading and invading our businesses and lives. I think the social media changed us to a great extent. And there are new technologies which are the AIs and the chat GPTs of the world. And how does one embrace that change? How do we bring that into our life? And how do we accommodate them in our thinking?
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult. Let me tell you honestly that when we were part of the old economy, to build a digital layer, we always thought we'll be able to do it. But building a digital layer was still above the physical layer. And it's very difficult to adapt to something you don't start from. Like you are a part of the digital economy, you think digital.
Yeah.
Everything is digital in
In our DNA.
your DNA. And now a new thing comes in. And that's not a part of your DNA. That's not a part of your belief system in a way. How does one learn about it, unlearn and adopt it, or do something?
Yeah.
Anyone?
See, one is, I think in part of my life has been consistently being adapting to change, and in small things to big things. So the first job I had was in a film laboratory. I still sit in a film laboratory, which is now converted. The change happens so quickly that the ones involved in it will be the last to change, right? And it happened with film, where if the film laboratory used to be like probably the most profitable division in the studio, which with the least number of people used to have hit the most number of prints. It was like a 20 crores plus cash cow that kept going, which disappeared in about 3-4 months when digital cinema came in. There was no print, there was no other system. And today visual effects is changing so quickly in terms of what we did in Bahubali will be obsolete now. How we will make that today is going to be changes very, very quick. AI, the fact that we can now, very soon, you on an AI bot can sit and make a film with Rana the way you want to watch Rana. So that's going to happen. But we've been the ones if we start fighting change, that's the day you break very, very quickly. And every company that tried to fight that change and stick to an economy which was slightly less convenient was the ones who dropped. And so we just figured that change has to be in our DNA, because constantly we are only building new products.
But let me ask you another question, Rana. Had you not been a part of your family business and you were not in the cinema, you were doing something else only, how would your parents have got changed? But you were the newer generation who had come in. They would have changed?
They would have changed. Definitely with being relevant in the business was very important. It's a film, the company started in 63, sir. So we don't even know what 1963 means. And constantly
but there was no significant technological shift which happened that time.
It's funny, there was, black and white to color was a significant change.
Not so much.
To sound was a big significant change.
But there were the incremental things which were happening.
Incremental.
Not transformational things.
Not transformational.
But maybe what feels
the OTT was
what feels incremental today might have been transformational then.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
So television was.
How do you make the distinction?
So I think let's take the case of technological changes from a bullock cart to a locomotive or a car. That was a transformational shift from then to aeroplane and then to an internet. They are all transformational shifts here.
So it's visceral basically. Got it.
Totally.
Okay. Sorry, how you were saying?
So platform kept changing in some ways, where cinema was watched in the theater, then it became television, then it became digital, then it became phone. That medium kept happening. But what happens is the core of storytelling doesn't really change.
That doesn't change.
Human as a human doesn't change. What he reacts to doesn't change when he falls. His feelings towards friends, feelings towards family, that doesn't. So that core is what we need to consistently keep in our business, and everything is subject to change. So we consistently, I'm saying, if you meet my father, he consistently is somebody who is fully learning all the time. Like he doesn't make movies for many years because he just feels like he's outdated and he comes back and makes again. So I think the fact that if you're this old a company, we are consistently with trends, but even sometimes if you're not with the trend, we just sit quiet, wait for the trend to pass, and then we catch the next one. Because it's not really important, because also we are privately held in some ways. Growth is not the only thing. We don't have to consistently grow year on year. If you're 60 years old, then it just gets really confusing after a point. But it's important for us to stay calm at times and say, let this pass, because this is something that we really don't understand. And it's also probably something that does not last for really long. Because a trend doesn't really last sometimes, and some things sit and become. So I think the fact of pulling back, but being definite to everything is going to change and we have to adapt to it. I think that's been pretty much our way of operation on each thing. Which is why now you see my investments consistently in everything that's new. Like we were heavily invested in augmented reality for some time. Now it's just free on WhatsApp. How does it? So it also is important which tech you're backing and what you're fighting and where it's consumed. So I think that's how we take decision one by one.
There's also that element of focus, right? Like what Mr. Biyani was saying, right? Like when you're picking your battles on what is going to be the next big thing and you're going to invest a lot of management bandwidth, you're going to invest a lot of capital into it. You have to be really sure that it's right, because if you do multiple things, small things that are wrong, each individual failure might not mean much, but when it adds
collectively, it just is
becomes
disastrous.
Yeah. I think for us, honestly, we're too young of a company on the opposite end of the spectrum. Too young of a company where we've not seen like monumental shifts yet. Obviously, we're pushing fast into games like Gen AI, a couple other things, and we're able to do that because we have that tech first DNA. And so again, feeds into the talent, right? It feeds into the actual people that are doing the work. If they are, deeply understand what's going on in that world, then it bubbles up into the company organically. But I think for us, adapting to change is obviously core. I think one of the biggest changes that we went through was, pretty quickly, we actually started our business in July, August 2021. Yeah.
20.
No, 2021.
21.
Yeah. We had before that, for the year and a half prior, we were experimenting and failing and delivering in our neighborhood in Shere Punjab. But we really started Zepto in July, August 2021. And for the first, I would say 9-10 months or so, we were in that roller coaster ride of free money, right? Capital was crazy. And it was towards the end of that big anomaly, 2012 to 2021 of 0% interest rates. Pretty quickly in March, we obviously the capital markets changed dramatically and we had to be much more disciplined, much more focused. And we didn't realize it at the time, but we were going through this really deep DNA shift that I'm very grateful for today, where we're trying to build a very fiscally disciplined company in our DNA that we might not have done if, for example, this bull run would have lasted for a couple more years. That shift was hard. It was difficult, right? It was painful. There were a lot of folks that we had brought on board with the growth at all cost mindset that were just no longer working at the company and that either had to be let go or quit themselves. It was painful for us also. We were only 8-9 months old at the time, but we said, okay, there are lots of things that we did wrong. And when we introspected, we said, really the direction that we were going off on, if we did not have this reality check, we might have been going off a cliff, right? So I think that was one big shift in our DNA, in our mindset of just thinking basis point by basis point, thinking with a lot of discipline, paisa by paisa, that we did not do maybe the first 8-9 months of the journey. But that was more the way that people think, right? And like the DNA of the company again, right? So that was really hard. It was painful. When you change the DNA of a company, but I think it's possible. And I think now we're in a position where our DNA is a lot more like DMart than it is like Uber, right? It's more like basis point by basis point. And I think that's never going to change for a long time. But who knows, right? Maybe year 5, there could be some crazy, new thing that throws us all off. So we'll wait and see.
I think just one point on that. What is the biggest shift? Mindset, yes, but I think practically in terms of execution, decision making, what are some of the biggest changes that you guys had to make post 8, 9, 10 months in terms of, hey, this is probably not going to be sustainable longer term, so let's probably do things differently or stop doing certain things?
Yeah. So yeah, again, counterintuitive, right? We closed a round about 170 million US, which was, I think in crores, about 1,200, 1,300 crores. We closed that equity capital in March 2022. And when we got that cash, we actually did the opposite. We said, we've got cash, let's not expand it on. Let's sit with this cash because
Contrarian.
somewhat contrarian, right? So we got the money and we said, we're just going to sit with this money. Like no expansion is happening at all. We operated like we had not raised that money, right? And we operated like we were extremely constrained. So we stopped launching new geographies for quite some time. And we said we did at that point launched about 170 stores in the span of 9 months, right? So it was already quite crazy. So we said within the 170 stores, we should be able to build a large profitable business in and of itself. And until we get conviction that we're there or about to be there, then we're going to start relaunching. So that was the first thing where we really just put ourselves in a box and said, everybody wants to grow and growth is still in our DNA, growing quite fast also today. But we said, let's constrain that impulse and let's make it a carrot at the end of the road where we nail this profitability lens and then we start growing. So that was the biggest shift that we make. We stopped launching stores, nailed it. Now we're starting to launch stores again. Now most of our stores are generating cash on a fully loaded basis and this business is growing quite fast. And now we're also in a position where I think a couple of other changes were also, I guess on G&A, like our actual team, like how big we wanted the team or thought the team should be versus we said, okay, let's force ourselves in constraints. Now we're sitting in a position where we really hire like it's a privilege, like painfully, like it's like really difficult to get anybody hired at Zepto. It has to go through me now. Any new hire, like even the smallest, like it's just painful.
You're a difficult, painful person.
I'm a painful guy. Yeah, that's why, yesterday we had yesterday we had a town hall. And it was Zepto turns 2, it was our second year anniversary, like I mentioned, right? We had a town hall with our entire company. And my co-founder, he's a much, all of you guys would like him more. He's much he's a jolly guy. Everybody likes him. He's more easygoing. I'm like always on kind of a crazy, guy that's always asking people what the hell is going on here. And at the end of it, after the end of the town hall, everyone was like, our head of HR basically said, okay, who did you join more today, KV or Aadit? And everybody's like, KV. And I was like, oh man, this is like, it's a bad cop, good cop there. But yeah. So.
Awesome. No, I think we've actually had a sort of similar mindset post our last round of funding, given the kind of ups and downs we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years, to just be very, very careful. I think sometimes it gets easy to have money in the bag and start making certain reckless decisions. But having seen some of the mistakes we've made with the first 2 rounds and certain larger decisions, and with how valuations, funding, everything has kind of taken a hit in the last 6 to 12 months, I think this time we're a lot more cautious in terms of where we want to spend that money and how we want to spend that money. And we keep joking with our investors that only our banks are actually making money because most of the money is still sitting in the bank. But we're going to expand, we're going to take our decision, but we're going to take it profitably and sustainably. And if that's the kind of growth journey you want, it's great. But if you want exponential growth, probably invest in crypto, right? There's a joke we keep cracking where we're going to build sustainably for the long term.
Yeah, I think there are some businesses, you're absolutely right, and I agree with everything you said, but there are some businesses that build, I don't know, and I'm sure you'll have a better perspective on this on the old economy than I did, but I was reading somewhere that from like 1979 to today, Reliance has grown like 32%. From like 1979 to today, year on year, 32%, which is like ridiculous.
Marathon,
ridiculous.
Right? Yeah, it's a marathon.
No, but 32% is like, that's ridiculous, right? And like that's exponential growth in my mind, right? And they've also built it like really well. I think so. I have a huge amount of respect for them. Really well, really profitably. How do those guys do it? Like, and that's why I keep thinking about as well, right? Like, how did Walmart build Walmart? Right? It took a couple of decades for sure, but they do $300 billion in sales, $400 billion in sales, and they did it highly profitably. That's crazy, right? Those are the best like companies, right? So I keep thinking about that. So now I'm actually curious to know how you would have seen some of those businesses get
I'll
built.
give you a story about Walmart when we were in their office, and we had to have your tea and your water, and there was a sign out there, and you can pay whatever you want for that. So that's frugalness. And there is the Sam Walton ghost everywhere across the office.
Yeah.
The kind of culture they have created and the kind of organization they have built is, I think it's the culture.
I agree with you. I 100% agree. And if you read the book, right, Made in America by Sam Walton, the story of Walmart, he's a crazy character. Like he was the richest man in the world a couple decades ago.
You can feel that in the office.
Yeah. And when you read that book also, at the beginning of the book, he actually says, we've made like whatever. He didn't even know how much that he had made. And he's like, I'm writing this book because a couple of generations out, if my grandkids start taking money and doing stupid things, I will haunt you. And that's why I'm going to write this book, because I will kill you guys. And so Like that guy is just a like neurotic, mad guy. I like that. Like sometimes I think you'd be a little bit
Yeah,
crazy.
you can. You are correlating yourself to a certain extent.
Yeah, exactly. I look up to folks like that, right? Like the people that build these insane businesses are, in a way,
there has
they're
to be
nuts.
something,
In some,
yeah.
yeah, they're a little bit nuts. They're a little bit crazy.
So you admit you are a little bit of a.
I'm like
You're on the
usual.
right
I'm completely
path,
bonkers.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
like
on the right path.
yeah. I'm just slowly losing my mind, and I'm doing it at a much earlier age. So that's gonna be fun.
So like like Rana, you said you were inspired by comic books, reading, watching cinema. So how does one learn in life, and how does one unlearn? Like for me, it has been books. I would have read one discipline of books around that discipline every year, and keep on. I think knowing stories about people who have been successful.
Inspiring, I think, one is, for us, inspiration comes really from everywhere. Like, books has always been a constant inspiration in every which form. And every time we had to understand visual, the exercise we did when we were younger is, we read a line in a book, and then we said, okay, how do I now make a shot of this? If I have to convert this 5 pages into one shot, how do I do it? So that was our exercise of trying to making films over time. And what really, the minute we saw films, like when we were younger, when we saw Star Wars, or when we saw the big spectacle-based films, which in India were made during the black and white era, but we never got to see it. Now that really blew our mind of the fact that you are getting removed from this world, transported into another world. That really happened with those movies. Like Star Wars, I would have seen like 200 or 300 times. I think I don't even remember how many times I saw it. But taking that back and just breaking that back down, right? And thing is, in India, nothing. If you take the playbook of the West, it's impossible to get it done here because it's too expensive to do that.
Agreed.
So it's how like Jugaad is a word that we use in India very, very interestingly, and I think most of what we do is find means the cheapest ways to deliver the highest quality, and I think India is the only country that you can still do that.
Yeah.
Like I remember when we were making Bahubali, right? And it was the biggest film that was ever being made. Like we crossed budgets of everybody. Like we've crossed budget to the highest collecting film also. Like we've gone beyond in terms of market. But when we were being watched by the West, we were the cheapest war film to be made in the world. Now, how does that equate, right? I'm saying like a 300 is like twice or thrice more expensive than you are. So the scale in India is very, very different, and how you achieve what you have to achieve is not actually in a playbook anywhere. It's an Indian playbook that you need to create.
That's a very interesting point, yeah.
It's an Indian playbook. It's completely Indian.
But you mentioned Jugaad. I'm curious. I actually want to hear everybody's thought process on Jugaad. People have different interpretations of Jugaad. Like the idea of doing the most with least constraints, I obviously resonate with that.
Yeah.
But there's also this other form of Jugaad that I really don't like, which is this hustle thought process.
Yeah.
And hustle in the way of like just getting it done kind of thought process. Like not with a structural, detailed solve, but just like Jugaad say you just get something done, right? We actually have now, like initially, but that was one of the transitions from like when the capital markets started switching, is that we don't want to do Jugaad. If we're going to solve something, it's going to be a structural solve. So we have like a no Jugaad culture at our company in that definition, not like the frugal definition, but like in the hustle definition. So everything that we do is like, if we have a problem with quality control, let's say if someone comes in and says, oh, you know what, in Hyderabad, in southern Hyderabad, there are some issues with these SKUs in quality. We keep getting complaints. One way to solve it is you go there, you like figure it out, get it done, move on, right? Like you go to the store, you see, okay, the temperature's messed up, you solve it. The second one is you build a detailed RCA framework. You say, what were actually the input metrics that led to the situation in the first place, solve the input metrics, and the actual problem will get solved without us even touching it, right? Like what was the breaking point in the sourcing that even got us to a position where the temperature in the store became a problem? And so we've said I'd rather do the latter half type of solve than the former.
Fixes.
Yeah, which both are important, and we're trying to balance it, but we are much more skewed towards the structural, boring solve than like the hustle solve.
So I just feel like in organizations like us, you need different types of people doing different things.
Sure.
Like when you're on a set, there's entire talent, there's one piece that's missing. Somebody needs to know how to get it that second. Now, that's the most important guy on that set that day.
You can't solve it structurally.
You can't solve it structurally.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
So we need different types of people where
Yeah.
Someone needs to record that change and then go back and fix it structurally. But
Yeah.
at that moment, it needs to be done in that.
I guess it's a lot more dynamic on the set.
It's a lot more dynamic, right?
But then
you only have so many days to get this done. Otherwise, everyone
So
disappears.
Rana, I have a question for you. A little digressing away from our subject is, I have met a lot of young people who are very fond of music and they know all the songs of music. And when I spoke to them about pathos and that kind of songs, nobody knew any songs which are the most popular songs at that point of time. Yeah. Why is the younger generation not following pathos? And there is no pathos in current music also in a sense, yeah.
Because there's a lot more pathos in life, sir. I think that's one to start with.
But there was pathos in life that was reflected in cinema earlier.
Like earlier, we saw tragedy as classics. Today is not that time anymore.
So today we are living in an era of abundance. There is no shortage.
Yeah, abundance. You want to see scale. You want to see different things. Tragedy is not.
No, you don't want to see.
Is not an emotion at all. It's very, very niche in terms of.
I'm asking you a question because you are still in between them. So
Yeah.
they would not know the word pathos also.
Yeah, probably.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, but the
A lot of it never used it.
that's
Yeah,
true.
we used it. No, this is a pathos song in the film. And we shot it. No, we don't shoot that anymore.
No, but this is also reflective of a consumer now.
For sure, yeah.
So the consumer is living in abundance. He wants to enjoy.
But is it also because it's a bit of an escape route? Cinema / entertainment?
Like we have grown up on cinema. Like all my belief systems were formed through cinema. All my belief systems, majorly.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Patriotism to, I would say, being a realist to a dreamer, both. Like Gurudutt being a realist and Raj Kapoor being a dreamer. So all belief systems came out of cinema.
Interesting. So okay, let me ask you actually, and I'll ask all three of you. What are what's the top 3 principles for each of you? Or maybe like your top 3 principles. Like if you had to define the way that you operate. Or actually, the top principle. Like what's your principle of life? Let's start with
the
that.
first.
Top principle.
Yeah.
Was just making work a lifestyle, man.
Yeah.
If this is what you do, this is who you are. And I think that solves many problems because you're there with it 24/7.
Yeah.
Mine is an interesting one. My principle is everybody around me has to be happy.
That's interesting.
Interesting.
That's
Around you or like
Around me.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I'm not here to save the world or save the planet here.
Okay.
If they are happy, and it's a very selfish thing also. If everybody around me is happy, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we actually have a bunch of, I think, 20 different philosophies. I don't remember all of them. But my 2 favorite ones on the list, I think the first one is everything is figure-outable. That's a word that we've coined at the Soul Soar. And the second one, which I think I resonate with even more, is 99% right is 100% wrong. I think to what you said, right? I don't think half-assing is the solution. I think you can always be like, hey, I did this, but this didn't happen. But if it's not 100%, it's not 100%.
I'm of a very different theory. 90.9% right is unbelievably right.
I mean, it also depends on the kind of problem you're solving.
No,
I think.
irrespective of, I think the nature is not perfect. How can you be perfect? Yeah.
You have to strive for it.
I think but I think you have to follow the principles of nature.
No, I think but just to finish it off, like the principle that I would run on is actually very similar to sort of achieving perfection. Actually, the principle that I have is a lot more similar to Rana, which is like if you're doing anything, like just you have to be all in. Like you're all in.
And somehow you figure it out in the end. But
But that is passion.
There's something funny my granddad told me the first day I was getting to sets. He didn't tell me about what kind of films I should do, nothing. He said, just get to set on time.
Yeah.
And then you'll figure it out from there. Just get to work and life will go.
Yeah. So I think you're all in. So like to me, it's like if I'm doing something, it has to become me. It can't be like a project. If I'm doing something, it's like as a lifestyle.
No, I have my idea about perfection is the enemy of frustration. You will be dejected, frustrated, not happy person if you try to be perfect. That's my philosophy of perfection.
I think ours probably comes more from the point of not half-assing it and
No, that's okay, but that's numerical again. I have no issues on that.
Like how do I let me push myself
just
to the
not
extreme.
from a philosophical point of view.
Yeah, like how do I in half a decade do what people have taken 2 decades to do it profitably and do it at scale? Like
That's good.
that to me is perfection, right? Like
I
maybe
don't
our
think
definition
that's
of
perfection.
I think
But
it's like
I'm saying, but you'll try, half that decade later, that perfection will change.
yeah, and like
So it's a.
I think it's weird because perfection, but it's also relative.
Yeah, it's relative.
Very relative. That's what. That's why I'm saying perfection is a.
Yeah, because it doesn't.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be too literal about it. Not like too literal about it. But I'm saying that like ideally, yeah. But I'm not trying to
I think it's more idealism than perfection in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's actually a little bit about your dreamer thought process. But it's like just with this thought process of saying, I don't want to cut myself any slack. Basically,
No,
I don't want to say like this is too difficult to do.
Like to be honest, we compromise.
Yeah.
If you call it Jugaad, it's Jugaad.
Yeah.
But we do compromise on quite a few things, especially in this country, India. You have to compromise.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, what was the best outcome possible within the circumstances I have? I don't want to cut myself any slack.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but I never was in a position where an outcome could have been better, but I cut myself some slack. And then I was like, this is good enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they could have been better, I should have done it. If it was in my hand. That's basically the thought process.
Great, yeah.
Awesome, sir.
All right.
Thank you.